February 19, 1943. 6:47 a.m. Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. The fountain pen trembled in Oberst Heinrich Volker's hand as he documented what would become one of the earliest comprehensive German intelligence reports about American semi-automatic rifle capabilities, his methodical handwriting betraying an unprecedented confusion that would fundamentally challenge 2 decades of German infantry doctrine and tactical assumptions about modern warfare. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning air was cold in the Tunisian highlands, carrying with it the acrid smell of cordite and burning vehicles from the previous day's engagement. Volker, a career infantry officer who had commanded troops from the Polish campaign through the brutal winter fighting in Russia, sat in a hastily established command post reviewing reports from battalion and company commanders who had just engaged American forces for the first time in sustained infantry combat. What he read contradicted everything the Wehrmacht had taught about rifle combat superiority since the Treaty of Versailles had forced Germany to rebuild its military doctrine from fundamental principles. The Americans possess infantry rifles capable of sustained rapid fire without manual bolt operation. This capability has been confirmed across multiple engagements along our assault axis. German infantry advancing under standard doctrine encountered fire volumes previously associated only with machine gun positions. Casualties among assault troops exceeded expectations by factors of 3 to 1 in sectors where American rifle infantry were concentrated. Our soldiers report that American riflemen maintain accurate fire while advancing or repositing, a capability that should be impossible with standard bolt-action weapons. Volker paused in his reading, removed his steel-rimmed glasses, and cleaned them with methodical precision, a habitual gesture that gave him time to process information that challenged his professional understanding. He had spent 23 years as an infantry officer, had written tactical manuals on rifle squad tactics, and had trained thousands of soldiers in the proven methods of German infantry combat. Everything in his experience told him that what these reports described was theoretically impossible within the constraints of known rifle technology and trained human capability. The fundamental mathematics of infantry firepower had been established through decades of combat analysis and weapons development. A trained rifleman with a bolt-action rifle, whether German, British, American, or Russian, could sustain approximately 10 to 12 aimed shots per minute under combat conditions. This rate had been consistent across multiple wars and weapon systems. It was limited not by the mechanical capability of rifles, which could theoretically be operated faster, but by the human factors of acquiring targets, aiming accurately, managing recoil, and operating the bolt mechanism under stress. German doctrine, like that of every modern army, was built on these fundamental assumptions about sustainable fire rates from individual riflemen. The German Karabiner 98K, the standard rifle of the Wehrmacht, was a superbly engineered weapon that represented the culmination of bolt-action rifle design. It was accurate, reliable, easy to maintain, and capable of precise fire at ranges exceeding 400 meters. German marksmanship training, which emphasized careful aimed fire over volume, had produced infantry capable of extraordinary accuracy. In the campaigns in Poland, France, and Russia, German rifle squads had consistently demonstrated tactical superiority over opponents who often possessed numerical advantages. The combination of superior training, excellent weapons, and proven tactics had validated German confidence in their infantry methods. The Mauser action that formed the basis of the Karabiner 98K was so fundamentally sound that it had been copied or adapted by arms manufacturers worldwide. The rifle's 5-round internal magazine, fed by stripper clips, provided what German doctrine considered the optimal balance between ammunition capacity, weapon weight, and reliability. Larger magazines added weight and complexity while encouraging undisciplined fire. The 5-round capacity forced fire discipline while providing sufficient ammunition for engagement sequences. This design philosophy reflected broader German tactical thinking that emphasized precision and efficiency over brute force. German squad tactics, refined through years of combat experience, were built around this rifle capability. A standard German infantry squad consisted of 10 men organized into 2 teams. The squad's firepower was concentrated in the MG-34 or MG-42 machine gun, widely regarded as the finest general-purpose machine gun in the world. The machine gun provided sustained fire and suppression while the rifleman maneuvered and delivered precise fire at identified targets. This combination of machine gun firepower and rifle accuracy had proven devastatingly effective across multiple theaters. German doctrine taught that properly employed infantry squads could defeat numerically superior forces through superior tactics and fire discipline. The reports Volker was reviewing described American rifle fire that didn't conform to these established parameters. Company commanders reported that American riflemen, not machine gunners, were generating fire volumes that German troops associated with automatic weapons. Soldiers who had survived close-quarters engagements described American infantry maintaining continuous fire while advancing, reloading without the distinctive pause that bolt-action operation required. Most disturbingly, the reports indicated that this capability was not limited to specialized units or selected marksmen but appeared to be standard across American rifle infantry. Hauptmann Friedrich Weber's after-action report from the previous day's fighting was particularly detailed. Weber commanded a rifle company from the 21st Panzer Division that had been tasked with seizing an American defensive position on high ground overlooking the pass. His company had executed a textbook infantry assault, using terrain for cover, advancing under machine gun support, and employing small unit tactics that had succeeded countless times in previous campaigns. The assault had failed with casualties exceeding 40% before Weber ordered withdrawal. Weber wrote with the precision of a professional soldier attempting to explain an outcome that contradicted tactical expectations. His report noted that initial reconnaissance had identified the American position as being held by approximately one platoon, perhaps 30 to 35 soldiers with standard rifle squad organization. German doctrine held that a reinforced rifle company attacking a platoon-sized position should achieve overwhelming local superiority. The attacking force possessed more than 3-to-1 numerical advantage, supporting machine guns and mortar fire. Victory should have been virtually certain. The assault had begun with a preparatory mortar barrage that forced the Americans to take cover. As the barrage lifted, Weber's lead platoons advanced rapidly, utilizing standard movement-to-contact techniques. The German soldiers moved in short rushes, with riflemen providing covering fire while others advanced. At approximately 200 meters from the American position, the defenders opened fire. What happened next was described with notable confusion in Weber's otherwise professional report. The volume of rifle fire from the American position exceeded anything Weber had encountered from a platoon-sized unit. His soldiers, experienced veterans of the Eastern Front where they had faced Soviet infantry attacks involving hundreds of rifles, reported that the fire density felt like facing a much larger force. More significantly, the fire was accurate and sustained. German soldiers taking cover found themselves under continuous fire that prevented effective return fire or further advance. Attempts to maneuver around the American flanks encountered the same devastating fire volumes. Weber had ordered his support machine guns to suppress the American position while assault teams attempted to close under covering fire. The machine guns were effective in forcing Americans to take cover, but the moment machine gun fire shifted to allow assault teams to advance, American rifle fire resumed at full intensity. The pattern repeated multiple times. German machine guns would suppress a section of the American line, assault teams would begin advancing, and before they could close to assault distance, American rifle fire would resume with sufficient volume and accuracy to halt the advance and inflict casualties. Most puzzling to Weber was the American ability to maintain fire while repositioning. German doctrine taught that riflemen were essentially static while operating their weapons. A soldier would take a firing position, aim, fire, operate the bolt to chamber a new round, reacquire the target, and fire again. Movement and accurate fire were mutually exclusive activities for bolt-action riflemen. American soldiers appeared capable of moving between positions while maintaining effective fire. Weber's report included statements from his soldiers describing Americans firing, moving several meters, and firing again without the pause that bolt operation should require. The engagement had lasted approximately 40 minutes before Weber, having lost 14 men killed and 23 wounded without making significant progress, ordered withdrawal under covering smoke. His professional assessment was that the American position must have been held by a reinforced company rather than a platoon, and that the defenders possessed more automatic weapons than reconnaissance had identified. The alternative explanation, that a platoon of riflemen had generated the observed fire volume, was incompatible with Weber's understanding of infantry combat capabilities. Similar reports had arrived from other units along the German assault front. A reconnaissance patrol from the 10th Panzer Division had engaged what they estimated as a squad-sized American position and been forced to withdraw after losing 5 men in less than 2 minutes of combat. The patrol leader reported that every American soldier appeared to be firing continuously, a capability that should require automatic weapons. An infantry battalion that had overrun an American position during night fighting reported finding large quantities of spent brass cartridges, far more than could be explained by the number of American casualties and prisoners taken if those soldiers had been armed with standard bolt-action rifles. Volker had spent the early morning hours attempting to reconcile these reports with his understanding of weapons capabilities and infantry tactics. Several explanations seemed possible. Perhaps the Americans possessed far more automatic weapons than German intelligence had estimated. Perhaps American soldiers were equipped with unusual ammunition loads that allowed extremely rapid reloading of bolt-action rifles. Perhaps the reports were exaggerated by soldiers confronting unfamiliar enemy tactics and responding with understandable confusion under combat stress. Yet Volker's professional instincts told him that something more fundamental was occurring. The reports came from experienced officers and soldiers who had fought on multiple fronts. These men could distinguish rifle fire from machine gun fire, could estimate force sizes based on fire volumes, and could describe tactical situations with reasonable accuracy. The consistency of reports across different units and engagements suggested not confusion but genuine encounter with unexpected American capabilities. At 7:15 a.m., Volker received information that would transform speculation into certainty. A prisoner interrogation team reported that they had captured an American rifleman whose weapon had been recovered intact. The weapon was being transported to division headquarters for technical examination. Volker immediately requested that the weapon and prisoner be brought to his location for preliminary assessment before forwarding to higher headquarters. Within an hour, both arrived at his command post. The American soldier was a private from the 1st Infantry Division, a young man who had been separated from his unit during the confused fighting of the previous day. He was frightened but uninjured, and after receiving water and food, willing to discuss basic information about his equipment. The weapon was unlike any rifle Volker had seen in his military career. It was clearly a rifle rather than a light machine gun, with a traditional stock and trigger mechanism. However, instead of a bolt handle protruding from the receiver, the weapon had a smooth profile broken only by a charging handle on the right side of the receiver. Volker examined the weapon with the attention of a man whose life might depend on understanding its capabilities. The rifle was heavier than a Carabiner 98K, weighing approximately 4.5 kilograms. The barrel was similar in length to German rifles, suggesting comparable ballistic performance. The most striking feature was the magazine, a steel box protruding below the receiver that clearly held more than the standard 5 rounds of German rifles. The American prisoner, through a German-speaking interpreter, identified the weapon as an M1 rifle, sometimes called a Garand after its designer. The magazine held 8 rounds of .30 caliber ammunition, and the weapon operated semi-automatically, firing 1 round with each trigger pull without requiring manual operation of a bolt mechanism. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Volker asked the prisoner to demonstrate loading and operation of the weapon using dummy cartridges provided by the interrogation team. The American soldier, with the mechanical familiarity that comes from extensive training, demonstrated the loading procedure. 8 rounds were pressed into a metal clip. The clip was inserted into the rifle from the top, pressing down against spring pressure until the clip locked into place and the bolt closed, chambering the first round. The weapon was now ready to fire 8 rounds in rapid succession, with the only action required being trigger pulls. After the 8th round was fired, the clip would automatically eject with a distinctive metallic ping sound, and the action would lock open ready for immediate reloading. The technical implications were immediately apparent to Volker. A trained soldier with this weapon could sustain 2 to 3 times the fire rate of a bolt-action rifleman. The 8-round capacity meant fewer reloading cycles. The semi-automatic operation eliminated the bolt manipulation that consumed time and disrupted aim between shots. An American rifleman could acquire a target, fire, and fire again almost immediately as recoil settled, while a German rifleman would fire, operate the bolt, reacquire the target, and fire again. The time difference per shot was perhaps 1 to 2 seconds, but accumulated across an engagement those seconds translated into 2 or 3 American shots for every German shot. More significantly, the semi-automatic operation allowed the rifleman to maintain better positional stability and target awareness. Operating a bolt-action rifle required the soldier to shift the weapon, work the bolt, and return to aim, a process that momentarily removed the weapon from the soldier's shoulder and disrupted sight picture. The M1 Garand required only that the soldier maintain proper firing position and pull the trigger repeatedly. This meant faster subsequent shots and better maintenance of situational awareness during combat. Volker asked the prisoner about training with the weapon and reliability in field conditions. The American soldier explained that all infantry riflemen in the U.S. Army were equipped with the M1 Garand and trained extensively in its use. The weapon was considered reliable in desert, cold, and wet conditions. Maintenance was straightforward and required less time than maintaining a bolt-action rifle because there were fewer small parts to disassemble and clean. The soldier expressed genuine confidence in the weapon, stating that American infantry preferred it overwhelmingly to any bolt-action alternative. The interrogation team had also recovered ammunition from the prisoner's equipment. The cartridge was identified as the 30-06 Springfield round, a powerful rifle cartridge comparable to the German 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser round used in the Karabiner 98K. This meant that the M1 Garand achieved its superior fire rate without sacrificing the range, accuracy, or stopping power of standard military rifle cartridges. The Americans had not adopted an intermediate cartridge or submachine gun round that would explain higher fire rates through reduced recoil. They had created a weapon that maintained full rifle ballistic performance while delivering substantially higher sustainable fire rates. Volker dismissed the prisoner and interrogation team, then sat alone with the captured M1 Garand, turning the weapon in his hands and contemplating the tactical implications. The physical evidence confirmed what the combat reports had suggested. American infantry possessed a technological advantage in individual rifleman firepower that fundamentally altered tactical calculations. A German rifle squad with 9 riflemen and 1 machine gun faced an American rifle squad where each rifleman possessed perhaps double or triple the sustained fire capability. This meant that rifle fire, which German doctrine treated as secondary to machine gun fire, became the primary American infantry firepower instead of a supporting element. The implications extended beyond simple firepower calculations. German infantry tactics emphasized maneuver and precision, with soldiers expected to identify targets, achieve proper firing positions, and deliver accurate shots rather than suppress areas with volume fire. These tactics were optimized for bolt-action rifles where each shot involved deliberate action and aimed fire was more efficient than rapid firing. American semi-automatic rifles enabled different tactical approaches. American infantry could suppress German positions with rifle fire alone, allowing maneuver without depending entirely on machine gun support. They could maintain continuous fire during defensive engagements, making it extremely difficult for attacking forces to exploit the pause between volleys that occurred with bolt-action rifles. Most troubling from Volker's perspective was that this technological advantage was not concentrated in specialized units or weapons systems that could be specifically targeted. Every American rifleman possessed this capability. In every engagement, at every level from individual firefights to company-sized battles, American infantry would have this fundamental advantage in sustainable firepower. German tactical superiority, built on training and proven methods, would need to overcome a persistent material disadvantage in the basic weapon carried by the most numerous soldiers in both armies. Volker resumed writing his report, now with certainty about facts rather than speculation about possibilities. He documented the weapon's specifications, operational characteristics, and tactical implications. He included recommendations that this information be disseminated immediately to all units likely to engage American forces, that tactical doctrine be updated to account for American firepower advantages, and that consideration be given to accelerating any German programs to develop comparable semi-automatic weapons. He wrote with the knowledge that this report would be forwarded through division and corps headquarters to the High Command, where decisions about doctrine, training, and equipment would be made by officers far from the combat realities of Tunisia. As Volker completed his report, he reflected on the broader implications of what he had learned. The German army had entered this war confident in its tactical superiority, its training methods, its leadership, and its weapons. That confidence had been validated through stunning victories in Poland, France, and the initial phases of the Russian campaign. German infantry doctrine was built on proven principles and had succeeded against numerically superior opponents. Now, in the North African desert, German soldiers were encountering an American military that possessed technological advantages that would partially offset German tactical expertise. The M1 Garand represented American industrial philosophy applied to infantry weapons. Rather than pursuing perfection in traditional bolt-action design, American engineers had created an entirely new category of infantry rifle that sacrificed some of the simplicity and elegance of bolt-action weapons to achieve substantially higher performance in the metric that mattered most in infantry combat: sustainable fire rate. The weapon was heavier, more complex, and more expensive than a bolt-action rifle, but it made each American rifleman significantly more effective in combat. This was characteristically American, Volker thought, using industrial capacity and technological innovation to overcome qualitative advantages that Germany had built through training and tactical development. The development of the M1 Garand had begun nearly 2 decades earlier, though Volker and most German officers would not learn this history until after the war. In 1919, following the First World War's devastating demonstration of modern warfare's industrial character, the United States Army recognized that future conflicts would require more lethal and efficient infantry weapons. The bolt-action Springfield 1903 rifle had served adequately during the war, but military theorists understood that semi-automatic weapons could substantially increase individual soldier effectiveness. The U.S. Army initiated a comprehensive program to develop a semi-automatic rifle suitable for general infantry use. Multiple designers submitted proposals, including John Garand, a Canadian-born engineer working at the Springfield Armory. Garand's initial designs were promising but faced significant technical challenges. Creating a semi-automatic rifle that could withstand the punishment of military service, function reliably in adverse conditions, and be manufactured at scale required solving numerous engineering problems that had defeated previous attempts. Garand worked obsessively on his design throughout the 1920s, refining the gas-operated mechanism, perfecting the rotating bolt, and developing the en-bloc clip system that would allow rapid reloading while maintaining reasonable manufacturing complexity. The rifle underwent extensive testing that revealed problems with virtually every component. Garand revised, refined, and redesigned elements of the weapon countless times, driven by perfectionist insistence that the rifle must work flawlessly before being accepted for service. By 1932, Garand's design had evolved into a reliable weapon that met the Army's requirements. However, there was significant resistance within military and political circles to adopting an expensive, complex new rifle when the existing Springfield 1903 functioned adequately and massive stockpiles existed. The United States was deep in the Great Depression, military budgets were severely constrained, and spending millions on new rifles seemed fiscally irresponsible to many decision-makers. Traditional military officers argued that the improved fire rate didn't justify the expense and that well-trained riflemen with bolt-action rifles remained perfectly effective. Garand and his supporters within the Ordnance Department persisted. They conducted demonstration after demonstration, compiled data showing the weapon's reliability and improved performance, and gradually built support for adoption. In 1936, the M1 Garand was officially adopted as the standard service rifle of the United States Army. Production began slowly, limited by manufacturing capacity and continued budget constraints. By 1941, when the United States entered World War II, production had accelerated but total numbers remained limited. Many American soldiers initially trained with the older Springfield rifles because insufficient M1 Garands existed to equip all units. The industrial mobilization following Pearl Harbor transformed M1 Garand production from a limited program to a massive undertaking. Springfield Armory and Winchester Repeating Arms Company manufactured rifles at ever-increasing rates. Production quality improved as manufacturing processes were refined. By 1943, essentially all American infantry deploying to combat theaters were equipped with M1 Garands. The weapon that John Garand had spent 14 years perfecting became the standard armament of the most rapidly expanding military force in history. American soldiers' initial reactions to the M1 Garand were mixed. The rifle was heavier than the Springfield 1903 or the Enfield rifles that some units initially carried. The gas-operated system required more maintenance and understanding. The 8-round N-block clip system was unfamiliar and some soldiers struggled initially with the loading procedure. However, once soldiers used the weapon in training and especially in combat, enthusiasm became nearly universal. The ability to fire 8 rounds rapidly, to maintain continuous fire during combat, and to reload quickly created confidence that bolt-action rifles couldn't match. Training programs evolved to leverage the M1 Garand's capabilities. American infantry doctrine emphasized fire superiority and aggressive tactics. Soldiers were trained to advance under covering fire, to suppress enemy positions with rifle fire rather than depending entirely on machine guns, and to maintain offensive momentum through continuous pressure. These tactics, which would have been extremely difficult with bolt-action rifles, became standard with the M1 Garand's fire rate and capacity. American infantry developed a distinctive combat style that emphasized firepower and aggression over the careful, methodical tactics that characterized German infantry operations. The contrast between American and German infantry philosophy reflected broader differences in military culture and industrial capacity. German doctrine emphasized efficiency, precision, and careful coordination. Limited resources meant that ammunition expenditure needed to be justified by confirmed hits. Training focused on marksmanship and fire discipline. The squad organization concentrated firepower in the machine gun while riflemen delivered precise supporting fire. This approach had proven highly effective and reflected German military traditions reaching back to the Prussian army. American doctrine emphasized overwhelming firepower and rapid tempo. Industrial capacity meant that ammunition supply was essentially unlimited by European standards. Training focused on volume fire and aggression. The squad organization distributed firepower across all riflemen, with each soldier capable of sustained fire rather than concentrating capability in specialized weapons. This approach reflected American industrial philosophy and cultural preferences for technological solutions rather than reliance on individual skill and training. Neither approach was inherently superior in all circumstances. German tactics were more ammunition efficient and often more effective when properly executed by well-trained soldiers. American tactics were more forgiving of individual skill variations and generated combat power through systematic application of material advantages. However, in sustained combat between forces of roughly equal quality, the side with superior individual weapons possessed significant advantages that training and tactics could only partially offset. Volker understood these implications as he forwarded his report through command channels. German infantry would need to adapt tactics to account for American firepower advantages. Standard assault techniques that relied on rapid advances between machine gun suppressive fires would face higher casualties against American rifle squads that could maintain near-continuous fire. Defensive tactics that assumed attackers armed with bolt-action rifles could be engaged during the pause between shots would fail against Americans who could fire repeatedly without discernible breaks. Every assumption built into German infantry doctrine would need reassessment. The immediate tactical adjustments were relatively straightforward. German units facing American infantry would need to concentrate machine gun fire more heavily to achieve suppression. Assaults would require more supporting fires and potentially larger assault forces to compensate for higher casualties. Defensive positions would need improved cover to protect against higher volumes of incoming fire. These adaptations were within German tactical capabilities and could be implemented quickly by experienced units. The longer-term implications were more troubling. If every engagement with American infantry involved fighting at a material disadvantage, German casualties would accumulate faster than American casualties in similar tactical situations. Over extended campaigns, these differential loss rates would erode German numerical and qualitative advantages. Furthermore, American production capacity meant that their equipment advantages would likely increase rather than decrease over time. Germany's industrial capacity was already strained supporting multiple fronts. Matching American weapons innovation and production would require resources that simply didn't exist. Volker had witnessed similar patterns on the Eastern Front, where Soviet numerical superiority and increasing material advantages had gradually overcome German tactical expertise. The Wehrmacht had won stunning victories in 1941 and 1942 through superior training, leadership, and tactics. By late 1942 and into 1943, Soviet forces had learned from their defeats, adopted improved tactics, and begun leveraging their material advantages more effectively. German units still won tactical victories but at increasing cost and with diminishing strategic effect. The pattern seemed likely to repeat in the West as American forces gained combat experience while maintaining persistent equipment advantages. These strategic considerations extended beyond Volker's immediate responsibilities. His task was to command his regiment effectively, implement tactics that maximized German advantages while minimizing disadvantages, and fulfill the operational objectives assigned by higher headquarters. Broader questions about industrial capacity, strategic resource allocation, and long-term sustainability of the German war effort would be addressed by others with access to information and authority that a regimental commander lacked. Nevertheless, Volker couldn't avoid recognizing that what he had learned about the M1 Garand represented a single example of a larger pattern. American forces possessed technological advantages across multiple domains. Their artillery was more numerous and better supplied with ammunition. Their communications equipment was more reliable and widely distributed. Their logistics capability delivered supplies forward with consistency that German units could rarely match. The M1 Garand was simply the most visible example of systematic American material superiority in nearly every category of military equipment. German advantages remained real and significant. Training was superior, particularly among infantry and armored units. Leadership at small unit levels was excellent, with NCOs and junior officers capable of independent action and tactical flexibility. Experience levels were higher, with many German soldiers veterans of multiple campaigns. Weapons systems like the MG-42 machine gun, the 88mm anti-aircraft gun used in ground roles, and various armored vehicles were equal or superior to American equivalents. These advantages had enabled Germany to fight successfully against numerically and materially superior opponents. The question that Volker found himself contemplating as morning turned to afternoon was whether these German advantages would prove sufficient against opponents who possessed both improving tactical competence and persistent material superiority. The American forces engaged in Tunisia were relatively inexperienced, still learning the realities of combat against a professional opponent. Yet even these green American units, making numerous tactical mistakes, possessed weapons that offset their inexperience. As American soldiers gained experience and improved their tactics, while maintaining their equipment advantages, the challenge of defeating them would intensify. Volker completed his administrative tasks, forwarded his report with notations indicating priority distribution, and prepared to brief his battalion commanders on the tactical implications of American rifle capabilities. The immediate challenge was clear: German forces needed to understand the new reality of combat against well-equipped American infantry and adapt tactics accordingly. Success in Tunisia and subsequent campaigns would require recognizing that the comfortable assumptions of German tactical superiority had been complicated by American material advantages that would persist and likely intensify throughout the war. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the Tunisian highlands, Volker stood outside his command post looking toward the American positions several kilometers distant. Somewhere in those positions were soldiers armed with M1 Garands, weapons that represented a fundamental challenge to German infantry doctrine. Those soldiers were supported by an industrial base capable of producing not just rifles but everything needed for modern warfare in quantities that Germany couldn't match. The battles ahead would test whether German tactical expertise could overcome these material disadvantages long enough to achieve strategic objectives that would force political resolution of a conflict that Germany increasingly couldn't win through military means alone. The M1 Garand was just a rifle, a tool used by individual soldiers in small unit engagements across battlefields that span continents. Yet this individual weapon embodied larger truths about industrial warfare, technological competition, and the ultimate victory of systems over individual excellence. The German soldier remained among the finest infantry in the world, equipped with good weapons and trained to high standards. The American soldier carried a better rifle, supported by better logistics, and backed by unlimited industrial capacity. The contest between these forces would determine not just tactical outcomes but the strategic direction of the war. Volker returned to his duties, knowing that the information about the M1 Garand would spread through German units as reports circulated and captured weapons were examined. Knowledge would lead to tactical adaptations that would partially offset American advantages. German soldiers would learn to concentrate fire against American positions, to use terrain more effectively, and to leverage their remaining advantages in training and experience. These adaptations would reduce but not eliminate the tactical edge that the M1 Garand provided. The fundamental reality would persist. In the most common infantry engagement, the rifle fight between individual soldiers or small units, American troops possessed a weapon that fired faster, held more rounds, and allowed more aggressive tactics than the excellent but technologically inferior German rifles. The sun was setting over the Tunisian mountains as Volker prepared his evening report. Tomorrow would bring new engagements, new tactical challenges, and continued learning about American capabilities. The war would continue, battles would be fought and won or lost, and individual soldiers would succeed or fail based on training, courage, and circumstances. But underlying all these immediate tactical realities was the deeper truth that Volker had documented in his report. The Americans had brought to this war an infantry rifle that represented the future of small arms design, while German forces fought with weapons that, however excellent, represented the perfected past. The outcome of that technological competition would influence every engagement that followed. The German infantry doctrine that encountered American semi-automatic rifles in Tunisia had been forged through decades of military evolution, refined by the harsh lessons of the First World War, and perfected through the successful campaigns of the early war years. Understanding why the M1 Garand represented such a profound challenge requires examining the philosophical foundations of German tactical thinking and the systematic training that had made Wehrmacht infantry among the most effective soldiers in the world. The roots of German infantry doctrine reached back to the Prussian military reforms of the 19th century, when thoughtful officers like Helmuth von Moltke had revolutionized warfare by emphasizing initiative, decentralized command, and the concept of mission-type tactics known as Auftragstaktik. This approach gave subordinate commanders significant freedom to accomplish assigned objectives using whatever methods they deemed appropriate based on local conditions. The philosophy trusted that well-trained officers and non-commissioned officers would make better tactical decisions than distant commanders who lacked immediate knowledge of battlefield conditions. This decentralized approach required exceptional training at all levels of the military hierarchy. German soldiers weren't simply taught to follow orders mechanically but were educated in tactical principles that allowed them to understand the broader context of their missions. A squad leader needed to comprehend not just his immediate task but how his squad's actions contributed to platoon objectives, which in turn supported company goals within the larger battalion mission. This comprehensive understanding of tactical purpose enabled German small units to adapt quickly to changing circumstances, exploit unexpected opportunities, and recover from setbacks without requiring detailed instructions from higher command. The training system that produced this capability was rigorous and comprehensive. German military service began with months of basic training that instilled fundamental soldier skills, physical conditioning, weapons proficiency, and military discipline. This initial training was followed by advanced individual training focused on specific military occupational specialties. Infantry soldiers received extensive instruction in marksmanship, small unit tactics, field craft, and the technical characteristics of their weapons and equipment. The training emphasized practical field exercises rather than classroom instruction, with soldiers spending weeks in realistic field conditions learning to function effectively under stress, fatigue, and adverse weather. Marksmanship training was particularly intensive, reflecting the German emphasis on precision and fire discipline. Recruits fired thousands of practice rounds under increasingly challenging conditions, learning to estimate ranges accurately, compensate for wind and elevation, and deliver first-round hits on targets at various distances. The standard expectation was that a trained German rifleman should be capable of hitting man-sized targets consistently at 300 meters and engaging area targets effectively at longer ranges. This level of marksmanship required not just mechanical skill in operating the rifle but understanding of ballistics, environmental effects on bullet trajectory, and the discipline to fire deliberately rather than reflexively. Beyond individual skills, German training emphasized small unit cohesion and tactical coordination. Squads trained together for months, developing the mutual understanding and trust that enabled effective teamwork under combat stress. Soldiers learned each other's strengths and weaknesses, developed nonverbal communication methods, and practiced coordinated movements until they became instinctive. This cohesion was critical to German tactical methods, which required squad members to function as a unified team rather than a collection of individuals following parallel orders. The German infantry squad organization reflected this tactical philosophy while also acknowledging the realities of modern firepower. The standard squad consisted of 10 men organized around the MG-34 or MG-42 machine gun, which served as the squad's primary weapon system. The machine gun team included the gunner, assistant gunner who carried additional ammunition and spare barrels, and an ammunition bearer. The remaining 7 soldiers, including the squad leader, were riflemen armed with Karabiner 98K bolt-action rifles. This organization concentrated the squad's sustained firepower in the machine gun while the riflemen provided security, engaged point targets, and supported the machine gun through tactical movement. The MG-34 and its successor the MG-42 were remarkable weapons that embodied German engineering excellence. The MG-42 in particular was arguably the finest machine gun of the Second World War, capable of firing up to 1,200 rounds per minute with exceptional reliability. The weapon's high rate of fire created a distinctive sound that Allied soldiers learned to recognize and fear, describing it as resembling tearing cloth or a buzz saw. The psychological effect of this weapon was substantial, with the sheer volume of fire often forcing enemy soldiers to take cover even when the actual accuracy might not justify such caution. German tactics were built around maximizing the machine gun's effectiveness while minimizing the squad's vulnerability during movement and assault. The basic approach involved establishing the machine gun in a position with good fields of fire, using its sustained firepower to suppress enemy positions, and maneuvering riflemen to attack from covered approaches or flanking positions. This combination of fire and maneuver had proven devastatingly effective in the campaigns across Poland, France, and the Soviet Union. German squads could develop far more combat power than their modest size suggested because the firepower was concentrated and employed systematically rather than distributed evenly across all squad members. The riflemen in a German squad played essential but supporting roles in this tactical system. They protected the machine gun team from enemy infantry attempting to close assault, engaged targets that the machine gun couldn't effectively address, and provided flexibility for reconnaissance, security, and special tasks. The bolt-action Karabiner 98K they carried was an excellent weapon for these purposes, offering precision, reliability, and adequate firepower for the rifleman's supporting role. German doctrine didn't expect riflemen to generate the sustained fire volumes that machine guns produced. Instead, riflemen delivered carefully aimed shots at identified targets, conserving ammunition and maximizing effectiveness through accuracy rather than volume. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.